on living wage and minimum wage. Why we are here today, or why we thought about this topic, it's not because we do not understand the frustrations about remunerations, about compensation and benefits, about wages and stipends. We understand the frustration, but our culture in resource intermediaries, or what we have decided to dwell on, is to dwell on the realities of how we can excel. First of all, how we can survive with our frustrations, and then how we can excel, not just surviving. Because most people are in the survival mode now. Most workers and people who work are in the survival mode, but we want to excel much more than that, and not minding the frustrations of what we go back home with, of our current living wage, which is actually the reality of time. So that's why we are here to discuss. For all HR professionals that you know about, we wanted to notify them to join in, because we believe that this session will be a very educative one, so that we can actually live aboard and live comfortably. Now, my guest today, well, is actually not a guest, he's part of us. Yes, his name is Ibrahim Adeniji, and we'll be delving straight up to it. But I'd like to just introduce who Ibrahim is. Ibrahim is a certified HR practitioner and seasoned speaker specializing in advanced HR at Brassen World Consulting, an accredited center for HR learning by CIPM. He's a results-oriented individual with cross-industry experiences. And with over 10 years in HR consulting, recruitment, and selection, Ibrahim currently serves as HR team lead, a management position at Resource Intermediaries Limited, and he focuses on manufacturing and FMCGs. Beyond his professional accolades, Ibrahim is a passionate advocate for good governance and poverty alleviation in Nigeria. So you would agree with me that Ibrahim is the right person for this session. Well, Ibrahim has also contributed as an executive member of the Good to Great Managers Circle, an international leadership and management mentor initiative. So please, if your hands are not busy, welcome Ibrahim to today's session. Yeah, it's a great profile. Thank you, guys. So please, I need you guys to share this session now. Please notify as many as you can, because this would really be an eye-opener and it will be very educative. So we are going straight into our topic for today. Welcome, Ibrahim. So
Thank
my
you,
first question, because this was born out of questions after we were able to put up the banner on our social media pages and all, we got questions online, and that's what we are going to be answering today. And as we go on, also, if you have any questions, clarifications that you need to ask, please drop it on the chat box. We'll come back to it. So the first is, how can you define minimum wage as it relates to us globally and locally? So just give us a brief of what minimum wage is.
Thank you, Kewe, for having me. First off, let me greet everybody on this section. Happy Workers' Day to you. At this time, we are celebrating the resilience of the Nigerian worker, and globally, we are trying to celebrate their dedication, their hard work, and all of those have not gone unnoticed. So this is to say thank you to everybody pushing it out, trying to make a living through paid employment. For the question, Kewe, it's very simple, because minimum wage is what we refer to as a legally lowest remuneration that any employer of labor can pay to anybody in Nigeria, okay, and globally. Okay, so that's what minimum wage is all about. So it is the legally minimum remuneration employer of labor can pay to an employee. So that's what minimum wage is all about.
Okay, thank you so much. So I believe most people already are aware of this, but I just wanted to remind what our guests today. So what would you say is the accurate balance between minimum and living wage as is now? What would you say is the balance between minimum and living wage now?
Okay, first off, what is living wage? So when you take a look at living wage vis-a-vis minimum wage, right? Living wage is that minimum income necessary for a worker to meet their basic needs. Okay, unlike minimum wage, which is the lowest legally amount you can pay to a worker. But living wage, on the other end, is the amount necessary for a worker to meet their basic needs. So, what are the basic needs we are talking about here? Food, clothes, shelter, including transportation. So that's what minimum
Living.
living wage is all about. But when we talk about striking a balance, it simply means as a nation, as employer, we must pay whatever remuneration to our employee that is ahead of inflation. Because currently the minimum wage in Nigeria is 30,000 naira.
Yeah.
And we are
It's
talking
getting.
about inflation of 33.2%, right? And this 30,000 naira was implemented as far back as 2019 under the previous administration by President Muhammadu Buhari, right? Since 5 years ago, and then dollar was about 325 naira, right? Now, what is dollar rate? What is the exchange rate? Dollar is as high as 1,200 naira to a dollar, right? So meaning the 30,000 naira is far eroded by the current inflation rate and further devaluation of naira. So to strike a balance, we mean it simply means we must be able to pay or give to a Nigerian worker a salary that is ahead of inflation or something that can really compete with inflation. Take, for instance, some organization in this economic situation have gone ahead to implement what we call palliatives,
Mm,
incentive, as far
mm,
as introducing cost of living adjustment, what is known as COLA. And before you arrive at such incentive or payment or increase in salary, you consider the cost of goods in the market currently. So what is the price of gari? What is the price of rice? What is the price of beans? This is what we call CPI, Consumer Pricing Index.
yeah.
Okay, so this is what gives you an idea of what the cost of living in Lagos is compared to Ibadan. What
Mm.
is the cost of living in the UK compared
Compared
to
to Nigeria.
Nigeria? So we can categorically say that the current minimum wage is far eroded by inflation and exchange rate. Okay, so to strike a balance simply means we must be able to pay the Nigerian worker what can compete with the current inflation rate.
So, so with this now, who do you think is responsible for this balance? Is it the government? Is it the employers of labor, or do you think everybody has a part to play? Who do you think is responsible for this balance?
Yes, without mixing words together, uh, all stakeholders are responsible, but largely this rests on the government. Okay, largely the government is responsible for creating an enabling environment, also implementing friendly economic policy in the sense that it favors the Nigerian workers. It also favors the employer of labor also, because when we talk about living wage and all that, from where would we have this increment? So if the employer is also struggling with sustainability and survival, they can't implement anything as it is. So when we have friendly economic policy, okay, this will cushion the effect and also makes the take home of the Nigerian worker more valuable and viable to sustain the Nigerian people.
Okay, so you mentioned two roles of the government. Now you said the government as a stakeholder can help in creating an enabling environment and then friendly employment policy, right? So what about the employers of labor? Do you have any specific role that they can play in seeing that there's also a strike of balance? Because okay, assuming now that the government creates an enabling environment and friendly employment policy that you just stated, now assuming that this is already in place, do you do you not still think that there is a part to play by the employers of labor, because they can decide if, do you think there's a high percentage of them being involved in what we are talking about of this strike of balance.
Absolutely, Kewe, absolutely. The employer of labor also have a role to play in this. I have only mentioned that largely this rests on the government, but for the
Okay.
employer of labor, they also are saddled with responsibility of making their employee feel welcome and also having a reasonable take home, right? When you pay your employee well, they take care of the business. Currently, no employer of labor is expected to pay below the minimum wage. That would be against the law, right? But for the role of this employer, you must be ready to also part way and also meet your employee halfway. So this simply means is either you are ready to reduce your profit margin just to take in the extra cost, or you even want to look at passing the extra cost down to the consumer. So these are options we are faced
For
as
the employers
employer of labor.
of labor. Okay.
Exactly. So, but the bottom line is you must be able to pay your employee well, especially in this current economic situation.
Word. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. So, before I go back to something just came. So, do you think that for especially for us as Resort Intermediaries Limited, for example, now, so do you think recruiters and or now for talent, do you think before a talent goes to probably an interview and all of that, is this a major, is the compensation and remuneration a major for the talent to consider before even going for an interview at all? Or do you think other
Spot
things
on,
should be in
Kewe.
place?
100%. 100 straightforward. 100% because we are in an
Where's the
era
place of
where
culture? Where's the place of, you need to know the culture of the organization. You need to know the staying power of the company being profitable and all of that.
okay, let me go there quickly. Kewe, we're in an era in the world. Actually, this is not peculiar to Nigeria, but because we are in Nigeria, we have to narrow this down to
Yeah.
Nigeria. We are in a situation where your take home can no longer take you home, right? You mentioned passion. You mentioned you mentioned passion. So if I may ask, Kewe, for the last 3 days, have you commit or moved from one position to the other? The answer will be yes. So,
Yeah.
Kewe, have you taken in anything in the last 3 days? The answer will be yes. But if I may ask you, in all of those, what did you use in making those things happen? Money, income. But when last did you use passion as an exchange for transportation or exchange for cost of goods? So this is pretty straightforward. Remuneration compensation package is now at the forefront of employee or people
Talent.
seeking job. And for the current talent, for their retainership, that's why we are having this conversation for employer of labor to see beyond making profits and also see the employee as an asset that should be invested in, especially at this trying time of the economy. So if it means you reducing your profitability to an extent, yes, you can do, in as much it's still an investment in your people.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Okay, so you already mentioned the current minimum wage as 30,000 naira. In your own view, do you think? And then when I was reading up, I saw that according to the law, the policy for minimum wage, it's been revisited every 5 years.
5 years.
Recommendations by NLC, TUC, Trade Labor Union, and all of that, they come together. And at this particular time, I know that they've been in talks with the government, the current government, and all. But in your
Yeah.
own view, do you think that um, a 5 year duration is too long or too small to be able to revisit the minimum wage in a country like Nigeria?
Yes, Kewe, 5 years is too long, though that is the current provision by the Minimum Wage Act for it to be reviewed and revisited every 5 years. But if you recall, the Nigerian populace or Nigerian worker had been thrown into abject poverty and hardship in the last 1 year, precisely May 29th, 2023, when the president announced the removal of fuel or petrol subsidy. So at that point, this will have been reviewed instantly in order to ameliorate the suffering of the Nigerian worker and also cushion the effect of the economic hardship on the Nigerian people. 5 years is way too long, though I will give kudos to this current administration in such a way that they have taken a proactive step in coming up with conversations regarding the minimum wage. As a matter of fact, the presidency had inaugurated before now tripartite committee to look into the minimum wage, right? Even though the NLC, that is the Nigerian Labour Congress, had proposed 709,000 naira. And also TUC, Trade Union Congress, had also proposed 447,000 naira as a new minimum wage. This brought about dichotomy between the two unions. But currently, they are jointly proposed 615,000 naira to the government to say this should be the minimum wage. I understand part of negotiation in our country. So probably maybe that's the starting point for conversation. But if you ask me, if you want to marry living wage and minimum wage, nobody should earn below 100,000 naira in this current economic situation.
Okay. I didn't hear that, but I heard that. Thank you very much. I can see Henry says, let's not forget the 30,000 naira. How many states are paying it? Because that's actually the reality. Because even saying even
Yes,
with 30,000 naira, how many states are
it,
even
it, it,
paying
it's
that?
unfortunate, Kewe. It's
Very,
unfortunate
very.
that some employer of labor, precisely in the public sector, are paying below 30,000 naira. I just got to know today that Ogun State pay as low as 10,000 naira as minimum wage.
But
That is sad.
shouldn't there be any, is it parastatal now or government, any government parastatal that is able to put a check on this?
Absolutely, there is. But again, what is the capacity? What is the internal generated revenue of this state? So some of them are hiding under the fact that they can't pay that minimum wage currently because they don't have the capacity. While we have cited an example of Lagos, Ogun State paying as low as 10,000 naira, let's commend a state like Edo State that was even paying before now 40,000 naira. And just 2 days ago on Monday, Governor Godwin Obaseki had announced an increment effective today, 1st of May, in celebration of Workers' Day, a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira effective today. So that is commendable, and we expect that other states and also private entities will follow suit. However, this is not a general or federal minimum wage. So for the federal minimum wage, that is still under consideration, and we are yet to have a report from the tripartite committee, okay, on their report to say this is what the minimum wage will look like. But we are only proposing and hoping that whatever they are coming with will be enough to ameliorate and cushion the effect of economic hardship on the Nigerian worker, okay? So we are still expecting that report.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that information that you just dropped. For those just joining us, thank you for joining in. We're talking about living wages versus minimum wages, and we're talking about the realities of it and then how to excel for employers of labor. We talked about the government's part to play as a stakeholder. We talked about employer of labor, the part to play as a stakeholder in harmonizing or trying to strike a balance between living wage and minimum wage, even while we understand the frustrations of our reality. Because it's not like we're not saying these frustrations are not there, or things are pretty much not hard on some people, or most of our workers, counterparts, and all. So now I'm going to move to what's the part of the employee, the part of the worker. What's the part of the worker in all of this? Because we know that this difficulty exists. The minimum wage is the living wage is not nothing to be compared to the minimum wage. The inflation that we are currently experiencing now. So on the part of the worker, what do you think a worker can do with this reality on how they can also still strike a balance and then just survive? And then, when I started, I said much more than surviving, we need to excel. not just on a survival mode. So what parts do you think a worker, a talent like us, can be able to play in all of this?
Thank you, Kewe, for that question, because we all have our role to play in all of this. And for the employees, for the Nigerian workers and individuals, and like myself, the truth is that salary cannot be enough. No matter how much you receive, your salary cannot be enough. However, there's a place of you self-developing. So there's a place of you upskilling, training yourself, developing yourself for higher paying jobs, for higher responsibility. So why
Okay.
your current employer cannot pay you that huge amount of salary, you can upskill and develop yourself for that high paying job elsewhere. And beyond that, can you even live within your means currently? Just like I said, your salary can never be enough, but you need to live within your means for you to sustain on that particular salary. Because we have people living above their means, overshooting their budget and all that. That cannot help you in this current economic situation, right? So when you upskill, when you develop yourself, you can then look for other high-paying job that can help your situation. But beyond that as well, you need to create other streams of income for yourself. You need to look for something like soft job you could be doing either online or after working hour that will not conflict your employment with your current employer. So you just have to find a way to create multiple streams of income. Just like myself, if I to take myself as an example, I am a lecturer at Brazilian World Consulting, a CIPM accredited center. So I lecture, so I do public speaking, and I'm being paid for it. Okay, and in RIL, this is also what we do. So when we train people, we give them soft skills, sales and marketing training, emotional intelligence. We are building your capacity for you. But how many people even come for such training? How many people even develop themselves? How many people even look or take responsibility and ownership for their own development? So these are the roles of individual in all of this.
Thank you. So you said upskilling, looking for more opportunities to elevate yourself so that you can also increase your earnings. I would also like to ask, I know you are also the HR team lead for manufacturing and FMCGs. So all of this that you said, it's easy for we mid-level management, top-level management, entry levels and all of that. But what about these workers in factories? What about these workers in these site locations? How practical can you just give us some practical ways that you think upskilling, example, practical ways that you think it can also help them also?
Um, for set of workers like factory hands, people at the shop floor, uh, it depends on who is managing them. For instance, this is where I give kudos to an organization like Resource Intermediaries Limited. For all our ASOS staff, we don't even leave their self-development to them. We take it to them. As we are aware, I just got back from one of our clients in Ibadan for people development and training. So we take this training to them, we give them soft skills training, we bring it to their hair on the need for personal development. And we also enroll them for high-paying jobs because we've built their capacity over time with trainings and staff engagement. So when we even have high-paying jobs, they are the first we put on our list because they are our current staff. So it's also for the employer to make sure that they serve as accountability partner in ensuring that their workforce are well trained and developed beyond the associate staff. Even the core staff of resource intermediaries are mandated to go for minimum 2 trainings in a year. That speaks volume. Who does that? Is resource intermediaries. So for us, training is at the forefront of our engagement with our employee, and we don't joke with that.
That's nice. Thank you so much. So you talked about the sensitization of the soft skills of empowering talent, employees, and all of that. And this still lies, because this still boils down to the HR professionals, HR practitioners. So please, if you're an HR personnel here, even if you seem or you think that, oh, the organization doesn't have this budget for training, for upskilling and all of that, you can come up with these initiatives. You can do partnership. You can collaborate with other training bodies, other companies who offer training where your organization does not even need to pay, but you are actually exchanging something else, exchanging another value in return. So please, HR personnel in the house, employees in the house, take it upon yourself to upskill yourself. And even if you see that you are in a place on an environment that is not empowering you to do this, you are free to take the door, the exits, and then
Absolutely.
don't say I Kebe said it. But yes, Kebe said it. Yes. But please, as we go on, because the complaint is becoming too much, but this is our reality. And we need to survive and move from complaining, the frustrations and all, to surviving and excelling in all of this. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Please, if you have any questions, because we're rounding up now, if you have any questions for Ibrahim, contributions, I can see so many contributions, and I'm glad that we are really talking about this at this time. Please do drop it. Do drop it. Okay, so I think my last question. Thank you. Okay, thank you for the initiative. Yes, I hope you take that to your company, Henry. Thank you so much. Okay, so um I would also like to ask, that I think you already said it. I wanted to say one of the last questions here was, how can companies leverage on training and development to sensitize their staff on striking this balance? And then you mentioned it, but I don't know if you have any other points you want to mention on how companies and HR professionals can leverage on training and development, or any other strategy, just to be able to see that their staff can survive, their staff can excel with the reality of the living wage. Before I'm checking the chat already. So you can share with us if you have any other strategies that we can adopt as HR practitioners and other
There,
employers.
there are several employee assistance program one could initiate as an organization, and the one that speaks to this particular subject or topic is personal financial management. Okay, for every employee to be able to manage their finances, though it's a personal responsibility, but the employer also have that shared responsibility in ensuring that they have employees who are living well and not living above their means. Before you know it, people start dipping hands into what is not important. So for employer, you could also bring up all this kind of initiative, financial awareness, savings initiative, and all that for your employee. And as far as bringing financial experts to your organization to educate your workforce, your employee, on how to best manage their economic situation and finances at this present time.
Time. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Thank you so much. This was really an eye-opening, and then thank you for the points that you dropped. We started from the part that the government has to play. We started from the part that the employers of labor or stakeholders have to play, and then we're now wrapping it up with employees, the parts that we, as personal workers, individuals, we have to play. Thank you for the employee initiative assistance that you just dropped, the strategies that we can adopt. It was really, really, really a nice session, and I really enjoyed it. And I can see the engagements in the chat. Also, please, if you have any questions for Ibrahim,